Welcome to Democratic Television, a program of the Santa Clara County Democratic Party that brings insights, perspectives, and attitudes of our always thoughtful Democratic guests. Today we're joined by Margaret Okuzumi, a wonderful Democratic Party activist who hails from Sunnyvale, California. Well, thanks for being on Democratic Television.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Before we get started talking about some of the issues that have come up that you've taken on as challenges or things that need to be dealt with, let's get to know you a little bit. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? Interesting hobbies?
I think of myself as being from the East Coast originally, but I've lived in different parts of the U.S. I was born in Ohio and spent part of my childhood in New Jersey, part in California in Contra Costa County, Florida, back in New Jersey. I've worked a summer in Ohio, a summer in Atlanta. I went to school in Pennsylvania, Swarthmore College. I've worked in New York City, my first job out of college. Worked in Philadelphia, and we've been in the Bay Area since '97.
Oh, 17 years, which is when my daughter was born. It was a good year. So going to school, did you have any proclivities that had you think the political life is something I want to get into, or I want to be an activist or change the world?
The activist side, I mean, wanting to change the world, yes. The political side, I had no idea about politics. I did not come from a political family. My dad was a chemist. I come from, nobody in my family was involved with politics. It was only my dad always voted, and he read the newspaper. So that was my model for political engagement.
To be informed.
Just to be informed. And I did have a letter to the editor published when I was in high school. I did apply and was accepted to an internship in Trenton, New Jersey, to work in to intern for the state legislature. But I didn't accept it because it was unpaid, and I couldn't figure out how I was going to make it work, and I didn't understand how prestigious it would be to accept that. And so all I just saw was, well, it's not paid, and I'm not really sure what this is about anyways. But I really had no idea, or local politics or anything. Yeah.
So as someone who was interested in seeing change, did you have any role models growing up, people that you looked up to and thought, wow, their involvement tells me that I could get involved like that? Or
Well, I have a degree in engineering, and I worked briefly as a mechanical engineer. And when I was growing up, I was very concerned about the environment and concerned about pollution and how whether humans would be able to sustain, living on the planet. And I thought that the pathway for change would be if I learned about like science and technology, and maybe through technological means that I could do something to, help save the world. And so I always was very mechanically inclined. I was one of those kids who, took apart pens and, stuff around the house and tinkered with things and built, my little brother would get model kits for his birthday, and I would always put them together. He always got all the cool toys, and I would, so fortunately I did have a brother and got to play with some of that stuff. But then when I got to college, I did have some classmates who were very much activists and were role models for me in a way. And I actually, there was an issue around like race and admission of minority students at my college, and there were some various things that happened. I did become president of our Swarthmore Asian organization, a campus group. But prior to that, I mean, I was active in things, and I was interested in the world, and but it didn't come from my family per se.
Got it. Yeah, just sort of organic, and college made a big difference. And
Yeah.
you were around other people who had different orbits. So what brought you and your husband to Sunnyvale?
Well, my husband had a startup that we were actually, after we finally got married and moved to, my husband was living and working in Japan for a couple of years, and we finally got married, and I joined him there for 10 months, and he got tired of the company that he was working for, and he had an idea for a startup. And he thought, well, it seems like Silicon Valley is the place to go. And he has an uncle who lives in Sunnyvale, so he was familiar with the area. And so we actually moved to Santa Clara initially, and then our landlord jacked up our rent, so then we moved to Sunnyvale, and we've been in Sunnyvale ever since.
So what got you interested in working at the local level on issues? I know that you have a reputation as a transportation expert and someone who has taken a look at public transportation systems, and you're an avid bicyclist.
So after living in Tokyo and my experience in Japan, and I have family in Japan, and experiencing such great public transit and the way transportation works there, and then coming to the Silicon Valley, which is supposedly so advanced, and seeing how we were really struggling with transportation, I had a lot of curiosity about that. And my uncle-in-law is active with the Sierra Club, and he said, oh, you should join the Sierra Club. And then I somehow heard about a talk of a guy who was retiring, who had been working on transportation issues with a group called Peninsula Rail 2000, and it was his going away talk about what's up with transportation in the Bay Area. So I dragged my husband there. We were like, yeah, what is wrong with transportation? And we learned some things, but I didn't get active like right away with that. But I got introduced. But I was looking the Sierra Club. Reading the Sierra Club newsletter, and there was just a point in my life, I was working as an engineer, and I would read the headlines in the paper, and I'd be really upset about like stuff that was happening in the world, but I didn't really have an outlet for doing anything. And just one day I was reading the Sierra Club newsletter, and it was talking about, in Alviso in San Jose, and they're looking at rezoning these wetlands, and these wetlands could be destroyed. And I grew up in Florida. I saw wetlands that were destroyed, and so that really touched me. So I knew nothing, but I went and I showed up, and I didn't know what a planning commission was. I had never testified. I was like shaking that first time. For the first, I don't know, couple years, every time, now it's old hat, but to go and to say anything, I had no idea. But that was the beginning. And then I got involved with the transportation stuff. I heard the board members of this group talk about, we have this big vote coming up on electrifying Caltrain, and we're not sure that there's enough votes to support electrification. So I said, what if we made some flyers and printed up a bunch of flyers and handed them out at the station? Like, maybe that would make a difference. So one of the board members said, well, I'll help you. And so we put together a flyer, and we printed it up. And as a result, 60 people faxed the Caltrain Joint Powers Board and said, please vote in support of electrification. And they did by one vote.
Oh, wow.
So that was it was a success. And
that was sort of your big bang then.
Yeah.
That success. And
yeah. And there were a lot of not successes after that, but that first success certainly carried me.
But that gave you a sense that, yes, I can do it. I'm a regular person, and not thinking I'm going to be a public speaker or testifying, and keeping my comments relevant and people listening. What was the next thing that you got into? Because I know you've been active in the Sunnyvale Democratic Club for a number of years, and involved in specific elections of candidates and other issues.
Yeah, well, our club is still, it still feels fairly newish. We started it in early 2009, after President Obama was elected that first term. Nancy Smith had been talking about, well, there's no club in Sunnyvale, and there's kind of a political void here. And I had been, so my husband, Bruce Hanna, was a Deniac. And that's actually how we became Democrats, because we were actually previously registered Green. And I had been disillusioned because Clinton had supported NAFTA, and so I thought, oh, I don't know if I'm really a Democrat or not. But my husband was a Deniac, so we re-registered as Democrats so that we could vote for Howard Dean in the primary. And so the Dean folks were encouraging people to get involved with the Democratic Party, and so I showed up to the Assembly district elections where the delegates, like, they were encouraging people to go to that.
Right.
And at that time, they were needing more female candidates. So I said, oh, I knew Brandon Sulzer, and I said, well, what's involved with it? It's like, well, you go to a convention. And I was like, okay, well, I'll do it. And so, but anyways, one of the things that I had promised that time when I was reelected as a delegate was like that we would start this club. And so I convened a group of folks, and we met in our living room, and in my living room, and flip chart and everything, and planned out what we wanted for this club. Yeah.
So it began in your living room.
Yes, it did.
Wow. And I know the club's been involved in a lot of things. Most recently, very significantly, you guys qualified a measure for the ballot that brought at least some moderate gun controls to the city.
Yeah, we gathered, there was a group of activists who gathered signatures to put 4 different gun regulations on the ballot, and it was actually, we didn't have enough signatures to actually put it on, but the city council agreed to put it on, and this last November, those passed. And those regulations were that, when guns are stored in your home, they need to be locked up. If guns are stolen from you, you need to report it to public safety. What else? Yeah, we closed the loophole, and at least in our city, that not only can you not buy large capacity magazines of 10 rounds or more, but you can't possess them in the city of Sunnyvale.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
We'll think if there's any more. We're going to take a break right now. When we come back, we'll talk about Measure C.
Okay.
Thanks. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name's Dave Cortese. I'm the president of the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors. A lot of people come to me day in and day out asking, how can I get involved? How can I make a difference in my community? Well, one of the things you can do is contact the local Democratic Party. As a lifelong Democrat, I know that that's one of the most inspiring and useful things you can do to help people, especially people who can't stand up for themselves. If you'd like to do that, there's a couple of ways to contact them. You can use their phone number, 408-445-9500, or go to the Democratic Party website, www.sccdp.org. If you want to make a difference, there's probably no better way than contacting our local Democratic Party. Thank you.
Welcome back to Democratic Television. We're interviewing Margaret Okuzumi, and we're talking about all the interesting things that you're involved with. You were integral in the passage of Proposition C, which limited certain aspects of gun ownership and ammunition and storage and reportability if a gun is stolen. That seemed to pass pretty well, even though, as I understand it, the NRA, the National Rifle Association, weighed in and tried to get people to vote against it.
Yeah, it passed with 66% of the vote, and just incredibly important, because how can you counter, what the vote of the will of the people was? The NRA and the National Sports Shooting Foundation did bring suits on behalf. Well, the fourth provision was that ammunition sales logs. So if you buy ammunition in Sunnyvale, records are kept that you bought ammunition, and so if the public safety needs to look at it for any reason, those records are there. And yeah, that was just a huge victory and hopefully a model for other cities to follow.
Now, I know council members and the mayor at the time, Tony Spitaleri, got very involved in it. And I think that leadership on behalf of the club, activists, obviously you, help people realize this is important, and it may be more important than just our borders.
Yeah, well, certainly after the Sandy Hook shootings, it was very fresh and on people's minds. People are very sensitive on the issue. Tony, this was actually Tony's brainchild, and I was happy to provide support on that. And there was we had a great group of folks, a great team working together to precinct walk, and I designed the lawn sign. And, yeah, just pulling all that together, and it was for people to vote and express their opinion on it.
So you designed the lawn signs, because I was going to ask you, did you model this after some other local effort? Or was this really organic? And
yeah, we didn't have a precedent for this.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I was a little bit nervous, kind of skeptical in the beginning, I don't know, because we also had some other council races, and there was some concern about, are we going to bring out a conservative voting base to, increase the chances that our good Democratic candidates wouldn't get elected. So there was actually a fair amount of concern about that. But in the end, we went for it, and we proved it could be done. And yeah, it was. We just had some amazing council meetings, and I just had no idea that the type of fervor that the Calguns folks, have on this issue is really eye-opening.
So you felt that it could be a model, and the fact that it passed means that it is a model. Have you guys been contacted by other communities or others looking to emulate your effort?
We have had interest from activists in other cities, and I think that's going to be an ongoing thing, and we'll see what happens.
I know one of the big frustrations for a lot of people is that we haven't had restrictions, more restrictions, common sense, moderate restrictions supported at the national or even the state level. I'm sure that activists would like to see something that's more uniform. You must have heard during the campaign, well, people can go to our neighboring cities and get things, but I guess once they get to Sunnyvale, there's at least reporting requirements.
Correct, and well, so the NRA is going to have a hard time fighting this city by city, but this is what people want, and so we're very hopeful that if we can start to get regions that agree on this, and that puts more pressure on the state to say, hey, we can do this, we can get it done, and maybe hopefully down the line nationally.
Well, I know the Democratic Party felt that this was a tremendous victory, and I don't want to embarrass you, but you did receive the Madge Overhouse Volunteer of the Year award from the party at our most recent Democratic Party dinner, and I think it was a recognition of what you had personally done in that effort, as well as the community. Were you surprised to receive that award? Or?
It was unexpected, and I felt really honored. I'm not usually one who's big on awards, but this one was really special, and very meaningful.
Good. I mean, I think that's the point of it, is to say, we notice, the party notices people who are doing yo person's work. I think that used to be yeoman's work, but trying to modernize it. So what has been your proudest moment as a Democrat? What's been the thing that's made you feel really good about what you're doing now?
Well, as an activist and making a difference, one proud moment was when I got the County Board of Supervisors to hold VTA to a ballot measure promise that part of a half-cent sales tax would be used to increase Caltrain service VTA was going to renege on that promise, and someone tipped me off about that, and I went and testified before the Board of Supervisors and made a big stink, and VTA added the service, and it made a huge difference for a lot of people.
So you are, so you felt that the fact that you caught that and were able to get down there, that's another sign that one person's activism really can make a difference.
Sure, it was something I felt I was able to affect as an individual, but most efforts, working together with a really good team of folks like we have in Sunnyvale, it's been a lot of fun.
That's great. So you're known as someone who generally rides her bike virtually everywhere. Are you making a political statement by doing that? Do you just like to ride? Do you like the fresh open air when it is fresh?
Well, there are so many reasons to ride a bike, and I mean it's connected with my interest in transportation and why, like, to me, transportation is just really important. It's important for community. When you ride a bicycle, you just have a very different experience of your community versus if you're driving, you know, in an enclosed car and kind of cut off from what's happening in your community. It's the same when you ride public transportation. Particularly if you ride the bus, you overhear conversations, like how you interact with people. It's just a whole different experience. And when you're walking, it's a whole different experience that I think is just really important for building one sense of, like, what is my community? And I started riding a bicycle mostly out of environmental motivations, but now it's that, but it's also because I enjoy it, it's fun, it's good for my health, it helps me to de-stress. There's just so many benefits.
And I've seen your bike. It's a smallish bike, and it looks like it's a foldable bike. What's up with that?
Yeah, I have a Bike Friday. They're made in Oregon, and I like having a folding bike. This one fits me well. It gives me flexibility. I can take it on public transit. If I am going to a meeting far away, and you know, I can get a ride back from someone, or I just have a lot of flexibility with it.
If you're leaving an event that you just got a bunch of awards at, you can have someone put the awards and the bike in the trunk.
Yeah. So actually, I did get a lift back from someone after the event, but I was just as happy to bike home as well. So.
So I know the county is, and hopefully cities are trying to build more bike lanes, give more space for bikes. Do you see that as a trend that will hopefully encourage people to give it a chance?
Well, in my years living here in the Valley, I've definitely seen those efforts make a difference. When I started bicycling in this area, I wouldn't see other cyclists very often, but now it's super common. I mean, that's a big change from what it was.
So you feel a sense of hope in that area?
Yeah, and I think you know, particularly that the newer the younger generations, the millennials in particular. I mean, it's known that they prefer biking and taking transit over driving, most of them. So, and you know, I mean, you know, climate change is like the central issue facing humanity at this time, and but there's many reasons to ride a bike, and it's fun.
I know the county is making a commitment to public transportation and making El Camino more accessible for public transportations, the bus rapid transit system and all that. Do you feel a sense of optimism is that another step in the right direction?
Well, it is a big political issue. It's a political issue in Sunnyvale and some of the other cities as well. And I mean, I think it comes down to what we think what the future looks like. Is it going to be more of the past, or how do we meet some of the challenges that we're facing now with, you know, population growth, or how we sustain our economy? So those are real big questions that we're struggling with, even in our Democratic Club. You know, folks have lots of questions, and we've been exploring that.
I know the bus rapid transit system is going near my house, and residents have said, well, they're taking out all the trees, but what they're not doing is realizing that there's a whole replanting plan to come back and bring in more trees so that the impact is actually more than mitigated. But yeah, these are certainly topics of the day. How do people get to and fro? What can we do to have more housing? What can we do to make our communities safer? All things that are epitomized by your great work as an activist.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's just really a statement. We have about a minute left. So if somebody wanted to get hold of you, is there a club website or something that people could go to that they could find you?
Sure. Our website is www.sunnyvaledems.org. sunnyvaledems.org. So we're pretty easy to find. We meet generally the third Saturday of the month in the afternoon in Sunnyvale, and we've got various activities going on, so hopefully you'll come and check us out.
And all that information's on the website.
Yeah.
So quick question, what's the furthest ride you've ever gone on?
I did the Foothill Century. That is 100 kilometers in a day. I'm not like a super like triathlete or anything like that. I haven't done any. I've done it. So we've done it. I've done a metric century, but not. Yeah.
Well, good for you.
Yeah.
Margaret,
60
thank you very
miles.
much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Sure. Thanks for watching Democratic Television. Give us a call at 408-445-9500 or visit our website, www.sccdp.org. Help make a difference, and we'll see you on the campaign or bike trail.